begin this journey through our first conversation with the sovereign-linked institutions and the development partners who are setting the tone for India's climate-linked finance architecture. So join me in starting with our first conversation of the day, Fireside Chat on strengthening India's climate journey, the role of sovereign-linked institutions and development partners. May I please invite on stage Mr. Prasad Gadkari, Executive Director and Chief Strategy Officer, the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. NIIF is India's sovereign-backed fund driving large-scale sustainable infrastructure investments across the country. I'd also like to invite Mr. Gaurav Kapoor, Head of Investment Capital, British High Commission. The British High Commission, through its investment partnerships, has been a steadfast development partner supporting India's transition to a green and resilient economy. And moderating this exciting conversation for us is Ms. Anjana Sheshadri, Vice President, NIIF Funds, and Chair, ISE Executive Council. Over to you, Anjana. Thanks.
Thank you, Ranjana. Is it audible now? Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Gaurav and Prasad, for joining us this morning. Just wanted to set the context for today's discussion. We have about 30 minutes for this fireside chat, and just contextualizing India's climate ambitions, which are bold, given that we aspire and we've committed to a net zero by 2070, which is a massive green infrastructure push. And it also has a growing appetite for sustainable investment. From the perspective of the UK government, there is a commitment between the government of UK and India to build sectors such as construction, infrastructure, clean energy, etc. And there also is a commitment between the UK-India infrastructure financing bridge between the NITI Aayog and the City of London. And then coming over to NIIF, which is also shaping India's agenda for directing sovereign capital and developing platforms. I just wanted to bring in your perspectives onto some framing questions here. So if we can quickly get started, if you look at the big picture, how do you both see India's climate journey evolving? And from your institutional vantage points, what's working well and where are we still falling short on mobilizing green capital? Perhaps Prasad, you want to take it up first, and then Gaurav.
Sure, thank you. First of all, good morning to everyone, and thank you to IIC Climate Policy Initiative for inviting us. And I think my compliments on the title of your event also, because we see and occasionally participate in multiple events around climate and green and all of that, but you focused on the investment and the financing part of it, which is where you have to balance. Obviously we want to focus on the climate related efforts, but we have to also figure out how do we get the money. So so I think I like your title. So coming to, I think from our vantage point, probably 2 or 3 points I would like to make. Fundamentally, I think there is a fair bit of activity happening across, all aspects of climate related sectors. And the way we look at climate, and we actually, the term a lot of times we use is green transition, really 4 aspects to it in terms of when we look at green transition. One is the electricity, which is still a dominant feature, and which is where a lot of capital expenditure is happening, whether it's generation on renewables, whether it's creation of green transmission corridors, distribution side, you have things like smart meters coming in, you have storage technologies on pumped hydro, battery and all of that. So that's one kind of a, what I should say, a bucket of activities. The second is around mobility, which is again, everything from manufacturing of electric vehicles to charging infrastructure, battery technologies and so on and so forth. So that's probably a bucket number 2. Bucket number 3 in our minds is really around industrial. And when I say industrial, a lot of things can fall under that, whether it's abatement, especially greening of hard to abate sectors in cement and steel, and how do you bring green hydrogen into it, manufacturing of solar modules. So a lot of things which can fall into the industrial and manufacturing kind of bucket. And the fourth is really around what I would call sustainability or sustainable infra. So even in the traditional infrastructure sectors, how do you bring more sustainable practices, sustainable investments? What about how do you invest in sanitation, water, resource efficiency? So across all of these, I think from our vantage point, as I said, we see a lot of activity which has happened in the last few years, and mainly on the back of, again, 3 or 4 main initiatives, largely from the government side, which has helped this. I would say first is around, what has worked is by creating a clear programmatic approach on sectors, creating an investment pipeline. Because see, money and capital, especially when we look at commercial capital, people are trying to see where are the large investable areas. Whilst there are areas, but which are the investable areas? And if we see across renewables, across transmission, across smart meter, there are large programs government has tried to put in place. There's a 500 gigawatt target for renewables. We're already at 200. You have 250 million smart meter program going on. We have a 50,000 circuit kilometers in terms of transmission. So there are large programs which have put in place, which has helped galvanize capital, help people focus on a certain aspect. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is, I think government has again tried to give a fillip to this by providing strong regulatory and policy support. And a few years back, when the renewable energy story started, by creating an agency like SECI to anchor the projects, or NTPC to anchor. When a central agency anchors projects, standardizes contracts, puts payment security mechanisms in place, that's what attracts investors and financiers. That's what is the way to bring capital into it. So that's worked very well. Third is really, even in new areas, there is a start which is made and a direction which is being given. And when I look at things like, water and sanitation, this whole Namami Gange program, and I know still it is underway, but it has shown reasonable early progress in terms of focus on the STP and sewerage treatment projects and stuff like that. There is early foundational work which has happened on offshore wind program. There is the green hydrogen mission is being put in place. You have CSL, which is an undertaking in the power ministry, which is anchoring procurement of electric buses through infrastructure like contracts. So these are new areas which wings have been given to. And the fourth is by providing fiscal benefits, and incentives, whether it's FAME, whether it's production linked incentives, by giving tax benefits to sovereign wealth funds and pension funds to invest in these sectors, by creating instruments like InvITs. I think all of this, when I put together and look at, is what has given the tailwinds to this sector. So lot of activity. I think I've answered first part of your question. Maybe I'll come to that second part later on as we go along. Yeah.
Great. Hello, everyone. Yes, I hope I'm audible. I echo what Prasad has said, and thank you, Anjana. And I want to also start with saying a huge thanks to IIC for the second such summit, Green Investment Forum, and to Ranjana and to the wider team as well. Brilliant job in trying to set this up. It's very topical. Coming back to this, I would then use maybe the 4P framework that you talked about. Maybe just the P's might be common, but let's talk with partnership, because that's quite important in terms of what NIIF is trying to do, what SBI and NIIF Fund are trying to do, what Government of India is trying to do. How can partners come in? So the first P, of course, is partnership. And in the opening, I think it was very clear that if you look around the world today, Girish had talked about what Prime Minister Modi has said about the world. I think that at the very top, at the prime ministerial level, the UK has a climate mission. And UK has set its leadership in terms of what it wants to do in the domestic sort of economy, and then what that means for us as we operate with partners around the world. And that really sets the context for how important the climate and the green economy is for both the countries. So that's really part of the P and completely echo what Prasad has talked about in terms of the policy direction and the optimism in terms of the long-term goals, the short-term goals, commitments, targets, clarity that the government has laid out. And therefore, I think it's incumbent on sovereign-linked institutions and development partners who usually are the ones who have the affinity to look at that long-term picture and horizon to come in and be that first port of call or be the pioneers in terms of trying to work this through. So the pioneering ability for us is really important as sovereign institutions and development partners, working with the NIIFs, SBI, development finance institutions, other countries and other agencies and institutions to try and see how can we pioneer sectors of the new economy, how can we set up structures and platforms which will then help. And it's not just talk. Prasad talked about Namami Gange. We have an investment, joint investment in fact with NIIF and us, which is invested in one such project to try and demonstrate to the market how it's working. And it's a company called Gadkari operating in Calcutta. So it's about how does this policy translate into actual reality on the ground, and what are we learning from this, and where is that closed loop messaging going back up to policymakers to be able to then sort of figure that out. The third P is actually about, people. So there is a whole talent in India, which I think it's probably better known to people outside who come to India to see how many people there are and what the quality and talent of those people is. So I think it's about backing the people is also something which is quite important to external partners and investors who see the potential in India in that sense. And that basically means all of you in the room. It means all of you who are not in the room but interested in this agenda and in the wider sort of mission and agenda for the world. Because what we need is good quality fund managers, good quality entrepreneurs, good quality programs, partnerships, because that's where money can come in. And the last P is about performance actually, because while we can talk about potential in sectors and the policy framework is there, nothing attracts investors like performance. And therefore the potential must translate into performance. And in terms of performance, there is also a lot of transparency being brought through by the regulator where investment funds, investment returns are tracked. There is global competition, so the industry, it's incumbent on the impact industry to try and make sure that not only are we seeking impact, but we're delivering impact in a way that is delivering performance or financial returns. Because that's where investors will also come in, along with others who are philanthropists and others who will come in with some blended structures and all of that. So that's really the gap I see. I think we can do a little bit more in terms of trying to shape the performance, trying to come up with better structures which are able to drive the shift at scale of what India needs. So it's not about billions. We all have to think about tens of billions and hundreds of billions in terms of how we look to 2030, 2040, 2070 targets. So it's about shifting our mindset to that big ambition is the shift that I think we all need to take. Thanks.
Thank you, Prasad and Gaurav. Prasad, you touched upon enabling policy, allocating capital to the right kind of institutions and projects. And Gaurav, you spoke about collaboration on partnerships and also on performance. All of these need very strong institutional mechanism to support the delivery of the entire objective. In terms of the role of your respective sovereign-linked institutions, there is a role that you play in developing capability or developing institutions that are fit for purpose. And you've done that over almost a decade. How has that experience been? What are the learnings? And then in the future, what are the kind of institutional partnerships we can see shaping? Sorry.
Say NIIF, and probably several of you would know, we are a Government of India anchored institution, but in partnership with large or some of the largest global investors. So our focus and areas of operation are, what are priority areas for the country, important areas for the country, but we are a commercial investor. We are a purely commercial investor. So, we invest with that mindset and essentially an equity investor. So the way we have sliced this and looked at this whole space is really through probably it's some kind of a multi-pronged approach is what we use to look at and invest in this space. And maybe again it's a 4x4 kind of structure. So through 4 different instrumentalities is how we are investing and looking at this. First is as an asset owner and builder and operator of really assets businesses. So we have set up, I would have to say, past now. We had a renewable energy company. We had acquired a small an existing platform in partnership, which was about 500 megawatts, scaled it to almost 4.5, 5 gigawatts. Again, a partnership where UK was an active partner with us in that. And I'm happy to report that we scaled it up almost, as I said, 10 times in a span of 4 years. And recently we have exited that. But we were majority owners of that business for 4 or 5 years. We scaled it up, we were operating it. So that's the kind of role we have chosen for ourselves. Another area where we have done something similar is in the smart metering space. Again, where we have a company majority owned by us, which is setting up probably 20 million smart meters across 7 states of India. So this is where our role, as I said, is more of a builder and operator of businesses. We are looking at the transmission space very actively as we speak. The second role which we play is really as a minority style, private equity style investing in businesses. And there, we have done again 3-4 ventures in that space. Our first one was in a company called Ather, which is probably known to several of you, leading electric scooter company, where we have partnered with, GIC, there are other investors. And, Ather is now a leading electric scooter company. And we have invested there from 2 of our different funds. We have backed Mahindra's last mile mobility, again in a more minority private equity sense, in their commercial space in the electric venture. And very recently we have done a similar investment in the electric bus space, a company called Eka Mobility. So here the role is more where we are supportive, we are giving capital, we work with the company and the founders at the board level, but we are not really running the businesses. The third is more as a supporter of fund ecosystem, and where it's a more a fund of fund kind of a role. And this is where we have worked very closely with Gaurav and team over the last few years. We created one of the leading private equity funds focused on this space, not only in India, but in the emerging markets, Green Growth Equity Fund. So we have championed and created funds. So one was that. We have helped create few other funds which invest in this space. There are a few venture funds, there are VC-like strategies, where our role is really of a fund investor. We are not running the businesses, but we help catalyze other capital into it. And fourth is really more of a credit or a debt financier. We have 2 NBFCs, about $6 billion of book. I think 55-60% of that book is focused on the climate space. So the approach really is how do you create different products, because they're, climate and green transition, as we all know, is not a homogeneous space. Every sector, every subsector is in a different stage of its evolution, its ability to absorb capital riskiness, and therefore we have also tried to customize our product offerings to which can cater to this space appropriately.
Yes, and I think we would partner Government of India in many different ways. So for us, it's like I mentioned, it's about a proper G2G partnership, which is at the top and following through the different levers that both governments have. With multilaterals, so for example, the UK has core funding to many of the multilaterals, whether it's World Bank, Asian Development Bank, some of our own institutions that we've helped set up and stand, which are focused on infrastructure and also climate, like the Private Infrastructure Development Group, with other like-minded countries. We've got our own bilateral programs. We've got our own bilateral development finance institution, the British International Investment, who are also going to be here, and you will hear from them during the day. And our bilateral program is the one that I can maybe talk a little bit more about. So in that, I think we've taken an approach of working with Government of India partner institutions, so which is why NIIF, SBI, SIDBI, and I don't think there would be any Government of India DFI which we would not be in talks with or have a partnership approach with through a different set of partnerships. It could be on policy, it could be through our technical assistance, joint work that we're trying to do in a particular sector, or it could be through our investment work. In the investment, and I was very pleased to hear the whole capital stack approach, because that's where we tend to come in as well, because we want to back pioneering initiatives where private capital is not yet so much available, where there is a role for public capital to come in to mobilize that private capital. And that's the role where we see ourselves also play in, as more on the pioneering side, but we do want the private capital to come in and the solutions to be commercial. And in that, we've also set up private equity funds, and many of them, you will see during the day or hear from during the day. And we continue to do that. You would also have noticed that there's a big focus for us now to back tech entrepreneurs for climate tech solutions, because we do think that the new tech has disruptive potential. It can come in and give us solutions which we did not think were possible. And I've been super pleased to see through our investments, and we invested, for example, in a climate sustainability fund called Avana Capital, where the solutions that we're able to see from that fund have huge transformative impact across the green economy of a country. And as you know from the UK experience, we've seen that last year, or the net zero set of sectors contribution to our economy in the UK grew at thrice the rate of the normal economy. So we know that the climate economy is actually growing. It's also giving returns. And it's about trying to make sure that we are there in partnership with government and others to try and exchange that learning, to share that learning with each other as our respective economies are growing, to try and then tap those synergies at a much higher level. So that's where I would like to, again, say that we are learning in this process, and we are very open to anybody who's got good ideas about where our resources can have the biggest impact.
Thanks, Gaurav, for that. We've known that UK government has used really innovative models to partner with G2G enterprises, as well as forge private and public sector initiatives. And Prasad, you also touched upon the various forms of ownership and the kind of controls you have, and because it's a different fit for a different problem, that that kind of an approach, because the kind of solutions that are required for investments into climate are multi-staged, and they also require pools of capital to be allotted in a slightly different way, and the risk and return profile of these also kind of vary. That sort of brings me to my next inquiry, which is we've seen like really successful partnerships both at NIIF and with the UK government. What can we see in the future in terms of them gaining scale? From the UK government's perspective, there was a recent visit from the Prime Minister, and there were like some commitments. And then on NIIF side, you also have a partnership with the India-Japan Fund. So there are a lot of initiatives that are happening. And then in the future, what can we see in terms of these initiatives driving scale?
So yes, I think you rightly touched upon, and I talked about the UK-India joint fund which we did, and the second one, thanks for bringing that up, that's our India-Japan fund. It's a $600 million fund in partnership with JBIC, 51 from JBIC and 49 from the Government of India. And this is, again, this focus of this fund is entirely on climate-related initiatives. The style, as I said, is more a private equity-like style, so it's a pure equity risk taker. And the focus is across all the dimensions which I described to you, across whether it's energy, whether it's mobility, services, manufacturing, new technologies. And the way, again, so we've separated is from our infra funds focus is really on asset heavy projects kind of businesses. The India-Japan fund strategy, we have really anchored more on manufacturing, services, products, new technologies, those kind of areas. So as of now, we've done 3 investments, all in the electric mobility space. Ather, which is electric scooter, Mahindra, which is the last mile commercial vehicle, as well as ICA, which is a bus. I think as we speak, we continue to look at multiple very interesting opportunities there in, whether it's recycling of critical minerals, it's battery technologies, it's sustainable agriculture, multiple new ideas are there. What I would like to emphasize though, and going back to maybe you had raised that question at the start, really to attract capital at scale, what works is really when you can provide large opportunities in terms of market sizes, you can show programmatic approaches, you have stabilized kind of regulatory structures. That's what will attract capital when you're looking at, especially on private equity, on growth capital, on credit. You need obviously venture funding and all of that for new technologies. That's a different space, but at scale, the larger proportion is there. And so our focus from this fund is really those kind of businesses which can scale up, which are in fast growth mode. And then our proposition is really twofold, because we have JBIC, which is a very esteemed partner there. We are able to bring a lot of Japanese angle, Japanese technologies, collaborations to work with the entrepreneurs which we are working. So that's really a strong proposition when we are doing those kind of deals. The whole Japanese angle and Japanese technology collaborations which we can offer is one part of the story. And the second what we offer is really the NIIF ecosystem, because we are there in across the spectrum of activities. We also work with the government of India on a lot of new ideas and policies. That in a combined way becomes a very strong proposition. So which is what I think is working well with the India-Japan fund of ours. Going forward, I definitely, I'm not going to go and speculate here, but we have close partnerships with several countries. Gaurav and I, we keep chatting. There are a couple of other conversations which we are doing. And when we find the right product for a space which is ripe enough to absorb the capital, that is where we try and strike these partnerships or create a fund product, because we want to deploy in a sensible manner something which will make sense for the sector, but which will also have a commercial impact. So that remains the focus for us.
Yeah, so I think for us, we've been very pleased that we had, like you alluded to, we had the Prime Ministers meet twice. Once Prime Minister Modi went to Chequers in the UK, and then I think the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister came with a large business delegation, and that was on the back of an FTA agreement that was signed. So I think there is a lot of appetite to look at India, look at the new economy sectors in India, and try and figure out where the opportunities are broadly between the two economies. And then there is also this Vision 2035, which has been agreed between UK and India, which sets out really the big areas where the two governments have agreed that it is most beneficial for us to combine. It's a public document, and I would encourage you to just read that. There are 2 or 3 big elements to it. Of course, growth, mutual growth in both economies is a big part of it. Investments, from commercial institutions also is a very big part of how we can encourage that and tap into it. On the development finance side, I think, which you might be looking at, there is a lot of work that is happening. The Prime Minister's announced this UK-India Climate Tech Fund, which is quite an ambitious fund, and we are looking for transformative ideas at the scale that can have impact and pioneer there. We've been bullish on trying to see if we can crack the larger quantum sectors like adaptation. What does it mean for us to try and get some business models there? So water cooling solutions could be areas that we could be looking at. And again, it's all about looking at maybe the new instruments. So there is Gift City, where we're trying to see how can we work with Gift City and with London Stock Exchange, for example, to try and unlock more products and solutions. And really, we have partnerships with big institutions in India also. So we are waiting for ideas about exactly where is that intersection of scale, speed, scope, and also the returns that we can get. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gaurav and Prasad, that for summing it up so brilliantly. That institutional partnerships and taking it to scale, different solutions for different kind of approaches. I'll just draw you towards your closing reflections. If if that's like one lever that needs to be turned to realize the ambitious targets that we have set out for climate investments, what would that one lever be? And with that, if you would just like to close, as you look ahead, you spoke about the Vision 2035. The government of India and the UK government have committed. If we have to realize that vision, then what's that one lever we could turn? And then just drawing you towards your closing reflections on that.
Maybe I think I'll reiterate what I started off with. I think we've seen good tailwinds. A lot of activity which has happened, and which has, I think, given lessons for the government, for the industry, in terms of how scale can be achieved, how capital can be attracted. And we have done successfully across some of the things which are working well. I would say if we and there itself, whether across the energy stack, it's not as if we've finished our mission, right? So we have to continue. We are not even halfway there, but we are on the right path. So keep a focus and let's reach there. Separately, how can we give wings to new areas, whether it's things like green hydrogen, whether it's carbon abatement, whether it's sustainable agriculture, drawing lessons from what has worked, again, in terms of programmatic approaches, the regulatory structures, mechanisms in place. If we put the foundational elements right, I think what I can say for sure is there is no dearth of capital in India or in the world. If we keep all of these foundation elements, if we are able to create first, the capital will follow. I think that will be really my closing message.
For me, I think it would again just be scale, and by scale I mean a huge order of magnitude of maybe 10 or more. So I think there would everybody needs to just think of scale in a really big way, transformative way. So for me, that is important. What that means, if you unpack it very quickly, it means that for institutional investors and investors outside, the risk management is really important. So and that happens at all levels. It happens at firm level, the diligence principles that we hold ourselves to, whether it's ESG or other standards, I think that's very important. It's about de-risking the policy sort of horizon over the longer term, because big investors take long-term bets. It's also about trying to make sure that there is performance and that potential converts into performance in a demonstrable, evidence-based way, because that's what assures people that it's just, money is not just going in, but it's coming out. And I can say that, there is huge opportunity for a lot of money to come in, provided the solutions are at scale. There is less money for smaller scale, to be honest. So think scale, think big.
Thank you for that. I think that really sets the tone for the day. You spoke about scale, you spoke about setting the right processes, and you also spoke about staying on the course, and like our mission is like halfway there, and we really need to stay on the course and sort of track our performance in order to reach our destination. With that, I think we'll bring our session to a close. I thank our panelists, and I look forward to a great session today. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Anjana, Prasad, and Gaurav, for that insightful conversation. It really helps us put in perspective that at the sovereign level, how we are seeing, the governments putting their efforts in terms of setting up the infrastructure for climate investments, with larger funds being set up by the UK government, India government, and the collaborations between the governments taking place. And it's really up to the private sector then to take the baton ahead and, helping the enterprises to scale.